in Java programming language, we have started. So from the beginning, if you will discuss about what we have covered. So initially, during our first two lecture, we have discussed about the basics of your Java programming language. What are the features of Java? What is the role of JVM? How Java executes its code? What is the internal structure of architecture of your JVM? Okay, so all these things we have discussed in our first lecture. Then later on, we came to know, we have gone through about how to write the first program of Java programming language. So how to write the first program. Okay. So over there we have used, so you at that time you have no idea how to write class and all those things. Then you came to know about that whenever you are writing any program, so it is mandatory to write a class. First create a class, then write public static void main. Okay. Then based on that, this method, after that, whatever the code you want to execute, you just write it. Then we have gone through your conditional statements. Okay, first of all, we have gone through your data types. What different types of data types are available? What are the sizes of those data types? What are the valid values? What are the invalid values? Then we have gone through the typecasting. Okay, how to typecast those data values? What are the different operators that are available? So all these things we have covered. After which we have covered your conditional statement like your if and your switch statement. What are the conditions? What are the constraints that are related to if and switch statement? All these things which we have covered. Okay, in our last previous lectures. Then in the last lecture, last few lectures, we have discussed about your loops. Okay, and how loops are basically executed. What, so we have covered three different types of loops: your for loop, your while loop, and your do while loop. Okay, and you know the functionality when to use which loop, even though there are no hard and hard constraint like, okay, you have to, you can, if you are using while loop, then you cannot use for loop. It's not like that, but it depends upon the programmer. Okay, like which loop you want to basically select or choose if you are basically want to write any code like that. Okay, then after that we have also covered the one more. In the last lecture we have covered two topics which is basically related to your transfer statement. First is your break, and second one is your continue statement. So two statements we have covered. When to use break statement. So break statement, even though we have used in your switch statement, we have also used in the case of your loops. Okay, so you know the functionality of break is that whenever you have written break, then it will entirely terminate your loop, that nearmost loop. Okay, so if you are using nested loop, so the loop which is closest to this loop, okay, that loop we are going to break. Similarly, continue we generally use whenever we want to skip that particular iteration. Now, at the end, we have discussed about labels also. So labels are basically generally used in Java instead of your go-to statement. So in Java, we don't have go-to statement. So if you want to use go-to statement, so what we generally use the concept of labels. So I have shown you the functionality of labels, like if we are using four or five loops over there, and out of those five loops, if from the innermost break statement, if I want to terminate all those loops, so how can I terminate it? So what I will do, I will use the concept of labels, and I will just write down the name of that labels. And if that condition got met, and if I'm going to execute this statement, then automatically it is going to terminate our entire loops. Okay, whatever the loop which is having, which is just after this your label statement we have. Okay, so till now we have discussed about all the concepts, programming major concepts of our programming language in your Java programming language. So the same concept you are going to learn even in your Python programming language, even in your C programming language, C++ programming language, like that. Even though some of the syntax are different, some of the constraints are different in all those programming languages, but in Java program, but if you'll see the logic, why we are using loop, why we are using if conditional statements, all the concepts are somehow similar among all your programming language. Now, in this lecture, what we are going to learn is the most important concept of our Java programming language is your objects and classes. So in this lecture, I'm going to cover your objects, what are classes, how to use objects, what objects are actually, why we are creating objects. All these questions are going to be basically, I'm going to tell you about the answer about all those questions related to objects and classes. And then we are also going to discuss about the life cycle of an object. Okay, so in this lecture, so let's start with our first topic, that what is an object. So as you already know that what is our Java, so our subject name is object oriented programming language using Java. So from this name you can directly say that okay, our this Java is an object oriented programming language. Okay, in my first lecture I told you about that Java supports object oriented property. Okay, the four pillars of Java, so we are going to discuss about those pillars also. So out of which you will see that we are using these objects. Okay, but actually what these objects are in your Java programming language, so let's go through it. So what is an object in Java? So an entity that has state and behavior is known as object in your Java. So I will give you an example. Through that example, you will understand what do you mean by state and what do you mean by behavior. Okay. So first thing is like I can just give you an example. Like if we have a chair, bike, marker, pen, table, chair, car. So all these are what we call it as your objects. So all objects are real time things. Okay, so whatever the thing you can basically analyze, you can see those things. Okay, so these things are not virtual, these things are real time available. Okay, so these things are known as what your objects. So as I told you that an object is having a state, so represent the data of an object. So what state is representing? The data. Okay. So for example, if I am having a pen, okay, so what is the shape of that pen? Okay. What is the color of that pen? What is the height of that pen? What is a suppose if that pen is rectangular, so what is the length and width? If it is circular, what is the radii of that pen? So all these are what we call it as state. Okay, so you know that every pen is like every ball pen is having its own different what state. Okay, they might be of your different different designs and like that. Okay, so an object is having a state. Second point is that it also have a behavior. So behavior means represent the behavior of an object such as deposit, withdraw, etc. So like in the case of your pen, our behavior will be write. Okay. So using pen, what we generally do, we write something. Okay. We perform some operation. We perform some methods over there. So all these things are known as what your behavior. Okay. And the third point is your identity. So it is used internally by the JVM to identify each object uniquely. Okay. So in the real time example, if I'm going to ask you about what is your pen, so you will always tell, okay, this is the brand of a pen. Okay. So for example, whatever the brand you want to take. So that is particular. For example, if I'm going to take an example of a car. Okay. So that particular car, what is the car? So if I'm going to ask you about the identity of that particular car, so you will say, okay, that car is your Swift car. Okay. And the number of that car, whatever the number is you are having. So that particular number, okay, is basically that car registration number is basically your identity. So in real life, how we are getting those identities, we are going to RTO, and RTO is basically generating some number, and based on that particular number, we are getting some identity number. But in Java programming language, who is going to tell us about the identity of object? Because you might have several objects of that car. Okay, suppose you have a car. So first car object is, for example, Swift. Okay, let's assume Swift is my object of this car. So what I will say on second one is my, for example, Alto. Second one, third one is my anything like BMW. So all these are, let's assume, the object of my car. So how I am able to find out the identities of these cars? So these cars identity in our Java programming language, if I'm writing a program, all these things are going to be done by our JVM. So JVM is used to identify each object uniquely. Okay. So I will tell you how objects are basically represented in your memories, through which you will understand the entire concept of your object in your Java programming language. So always remember, an object has three characteristics. So if somebody is going to ask you about, okay, whether that particular thing is an object or not, then you will say that whether it is having state, behavior, or identity. If if we are having all these things, then we will say that, okay, this is known as what your object. So let's assume pen, if we are saying that pen is an object, so its name is, for example, Reynolds, its color. So these are what your state, okay? So state is what are their characteristics, what are their features, okay? So they must have some value for that, for those characteristics. Like for brand, we are getting Reynolds. For color, we are getting white. These are known as states. And as you can see over there, it is used to write. So writing is the behavior, okay, of our pen. So using pen, we generally perform what? Your writing majorly, okay. So you can see over there, this is the behavior of our pen. So one more definition of object. If somebody is going to ask you about what is an object, so you will directly say that an object is an instance of of a class. Okay, an object is an instance of a class. Now again, one more question that comes into your mind is, then what is a class? Okay, that is a question that comes into your mind is, what is a class? Then what a class is? Let's go through it. A class is a group. See, you already know that if I'm going to ask you about your batch, okay, your batch is, for example, you are from group 2. So I'm going to say that, okay, this is a group 2 class. Okay, this is a class of which group 2. Now, why I'm saying that this is a class of a group 2? Because let's go through the definition and try to understand the concept of your class. So a class is a group of objects. So right now, what you do, you just understand that all of you are what your objects. Okay. So all the students, like for example, for this class, we have, let's assume 240 students. Okay. Then we will say that for this class, how many objects we have? We have 240. Okay. So these are the number of students which we are having, and these students are having some common properties. Okay, that's why they are inside in this group. Okay, for example, based on their roll number, based on the batches which basically this our group 2 is supporting. Okay, so these are the common properties. That is why you are in this group 2. Otherwise, you should be in your group 1. Okay, because you don't belong to EB05 group. So if you belong to EB05 group, so you will be in your group 1. But right now you are basically belonging in the group like EB0, you are 12 to whatever the EB31 group. Okay. So all these groups, those who are going to belong all these groups, they are going to be considered in the group 2 class. Okay. So how to call it as a class? So class is basically a template or blueprint for which objects are created. Okay. So first of all, what we are going to do whenever we are going to even for an architecture, okay, if I'm going to ask you about, okay, design a house. So what you do, how can you define one thing as a house? Okay, one thing as a house. So you will say that a house is having a kitchen, is having a walls, is having all these things. Then you will say that these are the properties of a house. Okay. So this, whatever the thing which we are defining it, okay. So that thing is basically a template. Okay. So which we are defining it, through which. And the object based on these template, what we are doing it, we are creating an object whenever we are assigning some values. Okay. And a house is having a walls. Okay, for example, we are saying that so wall are the property. So we have desired tell the our user that whenever you are having a wall, okay, then you will say that you will have, then we call it as a house. Okay, so suppose if I'm creating my house, okay, So in that walls, what I will do, I will assign some value. Let's assume I will assign 10. So in my house, I have assigned some value. So that is known as your state. So I have assigned some value over there. But in the case of class, what I am going to do, I am going to just discuss about the template of what are the things that are there for a house. Okay. So always remember, our class is just a template or blueprint for which objects are created. It is a logical entity. Okay. So our class, if you will see over there, it is virtually available. It is not physically available. So okay, if somebody is going to ask you about car, okay, so you can say that if suppose car is a class, so you know that the template of a car is what? Car is having wheel, car is having door, car is having all these things, okay, gear and all those things you are going to say. So these are what? The properties of a car. Now, if I'm going to ask you about, okay, this is an Alto car or BMW car, then on those characteristics, I'm going to assign some value. Okay. So now that particular car, like whatever the BMW car or Alto car, whatever the car you are referring as an object, basically you can touch that thing. Okay. And that object is real time available. Okay. So that is why those things are known as your object. So there is a difference between class and object. Okay. So class is a template. Okay. It is a template or blueprint for which objects are created, while your object are instance of a class. Always remember, through these classes, through these class properties, we assign some values, and based on that, what we are doing it, we are creating an object. So objects are real time. Okay, real time objects. Objects are available in real time, but our classes are what we call it as what your they are virtually available. Okay, not physically available. So it cannot be physical. Now what our classes contain. So till now, whatever the program you are writing, okay, so right now what you are doing it, you are just creating a class. Okay, whatever the class name, for example ABC, and then you what you do, you generally write public static void main method, and you generally perform whatever the operation you want to perform. So right now you are not creating any object. Okay, so because using this class you are performing those operations. So this is known as, this is what we are, because right now we are not using the functionality of a class. Right now we are just creating a single or simple program. It means that type of operation we can perform even using any other C or C++ programming language. Then what is the need of Java programming language? So the need of Java programming language is that in Java programming language we have objects. Okay, and through these objects, we are going to access all these fields, methods, constructors, your blocks, and nested class interface, etc. Okay. So a class in Java. So if somebody is going to ask you about what our class contains, okay. So our class can contain fields, methods, constructor, blocks, nested class, and interface. So all these things are going to be covered by our class. So some things, all things are optional. Okay, it's not like that our class should contain some fields. So all these things are optional. So what do you mean by fields? So being a programmer, our fields are basically our values. Okay, if I'm going to write int a or int num, so these are what my fields. So fields generally refers what the characteristics. So suppose if I'm going to write, I'm going to create a string, and in a string I'm going to write color. Okay, color. So this is what? This is the field of what? My car. Okay, so this is the field of my car. So this is just a class. So in class, what we generally do, we generally assign all these fields. Like what are the characteristics? So fields are what? The characteristics of a class. Okay. So how can we call that this is a class car? So whenever you are having these following characteristics, like you will have a string, you will have a color, you will have a wheels, you will have doors, you will have engine, you will have battery, all these things. Okay, if you have all these characteristics, then you can call that particular characteristic as what? Your car. Okay, now Now, methods you will have. Methods are what? Suppose car is what we generally use for car for driving. Okay, so you can call it as, yeah, driving is a method. So you can create different kind of methods. Okay, methods through which we perform some operations. So operations in Java generally are going to be performed using methods. Okay, constructors. So right now I'm not going to discuss about constructor. Blocks, you already know that whatever the block of code we are having, nested class. So these things we are going to discuss about later. Right now we are going to discuss about only fields and your. So this is how basically you know that how to create a class. So this syntax you are already, all of you are already using it. Okay, class name, whatever the class name you want to write, then you use curly braces and then you enter field and your method. Now what we are doing it that till now what we are focusing upon is that, okay, we have a class. Okay, so now we are going to think about this entire scenario in using our programming concept, how we are going to basically map this entire class concept and object concept in our programming language. So right now you already know that you are creating a class, but till now, if I am going to ask you if like whether we have used the functionality of a class, so you have no idea, because right now you have no idea why we are creating a class. But you know that if we are not creating a class in Java programming language, we are creating an error. We are getting an error. But still, if somebody is going to ask you that, okay, right now, till now, use because you are you have an idea about till loop. So why we are creating a class? So you will say that in Java we generally create a class, but you don't know the exact reason why we are creating a class. So why we create a class? Now you have an idea is that we create a class because it is a template or blueprint for which objects are created. So with the help of this template, what we do, we generally create different objects. Okay, like this. Now this is just an example of how class and objects are created in Java programming language. Okay, so this is a Java program to illustrate how to define a class and fields. Okay, defining a student class. So let's assume what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a class as a student. So what I will do, I will write it down class and I will write student over there. Then you know that whenever we are creating a class, okay, any class, for example, A, B, C, what we do, we generally write curly braces. So the whatever the things that are there inside these two curly braces are basically the body of my class. Always remember, okay? Always remember, this is the body of my class. Now, after that, what I am going to do, I am going to define because our student is having some characteristics. So what are the characteristics? So there are several characteristics, okay? But I just want to mention two characteristics. First characteristic is ID. So every student is having some enrollment ID. So like if I'm going to find out whether that particular person is a student or not. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to find out its ID, whether that person is having student ID or Bennett ID, whether that person is a Bennett University student or not. So how can I find it out? I will check its his or her ID, okay, and the name. So these are the two characteristics. It might be possible you might take several other characteristics too, but let's assume for our current scenario, we are taking only two characteristics. These are your int ID, and because it is of your integer data type. The second one is your string ID, that is your name. So name always store what your string, okay, like your characters, list of characters. Now, after that, you already know that what we generally do, we create public static void main. So it is mandatory in Java, okay, whenever you are creating a single class. So in that particular class, that class should contain public static void main. And you know the reason why it is mandatory to have these things, okay? Now, once I have created this class, public static void main string args, now let us assume I want to create an object of this class. Okay, I want to create an object of which class? Your student class. So how can I create an object of this class? What I will do, I will create, yes.
Sir, this ID and name are the object, na?
No. These are not objects. Okay. Right now, don't get confused. These are your fields. Okay. These are what? These are your data type.
Okay.
Na? These are your data type. Okay. So don't get confused. So these are what your data types. It means these are the characteristics. So see, whenever you are creating some template, okay. So if I'm going to ask you about, okay, according to me, if I will call a student as Bennett University student, if his ID, if that student is having an ID, if his student is having some name, if his student is having some, for example, like specific hostel, okay, allocated like this. So these are the characteristics through which I just suppose I just want to define a Bennett University student. So through these features, so these are the features through which I just want to define. So now I have created a template. Now suppose one student, for example, any student, for example, Sachin, okay, one student, one person, right now I will call this as a person. So whether this person Sachin is a student or not, I will check. Whether this Sachin is having an ID, yes. Whether this Sachin is having a name, yes. Whether this Sachin is having some hostel allocated, yes. Then what I will call, then this is an object of this which class? Your Bennett University student class, like this. Okay. So physically, so Bennett University is the criteria which we have created is not physically available. It is virtually available. But as a student, you are physically available, which is satisfying all these features. Okay, like that. So similarly, what we have done for this student, we have created two data type, that is your integer data type and string data type. Now let's go through and how to create your objects in Java programming language. This is very important, okay? If somebody is going to ask you that how to create objects in Java, so let me tell you about this. Now, in whenever you are creating an object, so this is the line you are going to write. Okay. First of all, you are going to write class name. Okay. First of all, what you do, you just write class name. Then whatever the object name you want to take, it's up to you. Okay. Whatever the object name you want to take. Now, after this new, you have new keyword, and then you are using this student as a method. Now, what these four fields are, if you will see over there, this student is what? This is a class. Okay, this is a class. You already know that what this student is. What student is a class, because I have created this student. Okay, so student is a class. What s1 is? S1 is a variable name. Okay, variable name. I'm going to tell you about what this variable name is suggesting us. Now now using new keyword, because sometimes in most of the books, and the way students generally understand, if somebody is going to ask you about what s1 is, they will say, okay, this is an object. Always remember, okay, s1 is not a object. S1 is just a variable name. Okay, and it is of which data type? Student data type. So generally, if I'm going to write int id, okay, if I'm going to write int id, so what you will say? Id is a variable of which data type? Integer data type. Similarly, if I'm going to write student stu, for example, then what this stu is? Stu is a variable name, okay, of which data type? Your student data type. And these data types are known as your non-primitive data type. Non-primitive data type. Always remember, okay? And if you have no idea, just try to note it down, these concepts in your copy. So this student is what? If you are going to write something like that, student stu, okay? So this stu is a variable. So you can take whatever the name you want to take of which data type? Your student data type. Okay. Now, after that, what I have written? I have written new. Now, this new, what is the uses of this new keyword? Using this new keyword, we always create an object. What we do? We create an object. So using new keyword, what we are doing it, we have a memory. Okay. So inside that particular memory, we are creating an space. And for that particular space, what I am going to do, I am going to create an object. Okay. So I have created an object now of which class? So this is generally a constructor. So right now I'm not talking about constructor. So right now just assume this thing, this student as what your class. Okay. As what your class. So even though this student is what, whenever you are getting these two, this thing, so it means that it is a method. Okay. So it is calling a student method. We generally call it as a constructor. But right now, just assume it that we are calling it as a class. So right now, what I have done, I have created an object of which class? Your student class. So now I have created an object. Okay. Now after creating this object, it means that this class is having what? This class is having two attributes. What these attributes are? ID and your name. So it means that physically now inside my memory, to this object is having what? My ID and my name. Okay. So whatever the thing, whatever the features, whatever the methods that are there inside my student class are going to be allocated inside my object. Okay, this is I'm going to talking about the memory. Okay, so now you have an object, and this object is having, for our current example, we have only ID and a name. Now what we are going to do, we are using this student S1 data type. Okay, as I told you that S1 is a data type is a variable name of which data type? Your student data type. So actually this S1 is storing what? S1 is storing the address. Okay, the address of this object 1. Suppose this is object 1 which I have created of this class. So this, in because you already know that whatever the thing which we are storing in a memory, it is stored and it is having some address. Okay, right? Like you are sitting in your house. Okay, so you are basically occupying some space. Actually, if you are going to talk it about the space, so you are occupying some space. So it means that you have some address. So that address is your house address. Okay, that is the address of your house, whatever the address you have. Similarly, in your memory, whenever you are occupying some space, okay, that occupying space is having some address. So suppose, let's assume that particular address is 1000. I'm just giving you an example. Okay, even though it is just an address in your hexadecimal form. Okay, or we generally call it as these address are in your having some hash values. Okay, these are having some hash values which we are going to convert it into your hexadecimal form. Now let's assume that this is having an 1000 value. Then what will happen? Student S1 will having what? This address, and the address will be 1000. Okay, now I am having the address of our object 1. Okay, now, so that if in future, if I am going to execute my, if I just want to fetch this information, okay, s1.id, s1.id, then what will happen? I will go 100 address, 1000 address, and I will find out the address of what is the value of id. Similarly, if I am going to write it down s1 dot name, then what I will do, I will go, s1 is having 1000, go to 1000, and then find out the name of what is, we call it as what your name, what is the value over there. Okay, so this is very important in your Java programming language. So till now, what I have
Sir,
told you, yes.
sir, I'm sorry I didn't get that object here. Can you please
Oh,
tell it again?
okay. No, so I'm again explaining this thing. Okay,
So basically, the object is this class and ID, na?
this is what you are saying is an object. No, this is just a data type. Got it? We generally call these things are what your instance variable. These are the variables. Got it? So see what
Sir,
I'm
what is
telling.
an object now?
Yeah, I'm telling you the object. Okay. See, first of all, I'm going to tell you about how objects are created. So whenever you want to create an object of this class, see, this is just a template. Okay. And now I'm going to tell you again, I'm just going to repeat what do you mean by class. So right now, I want to create a class named as a student. And this student class, I want to field ID and your name. Okay. So this is my question. Suppose in the problem statement, I have given you that you have to create a class, and that particular class is having two data type. One is your ID, second one is your name. So for which what you do, you just create a class named as a student, and then you write two data type because integer ID is of your integer data type, and name is what your string data type. Okay. So now you have done this thing. Now what I want to create an object. I want to create an object. So whenever you are creating a class, okay, so in class, actually, you are not storing any value. So physically, you are not storing any value. So that is why what I will do, because in reality, physically, like you guys are what student. So if I'm going to ask you about what are you a student, then what you will say, yes, I am a student. Then I will ask why you are a student, because you will say, because I am having a name, I am having an ID number. Okay, like this. Then I will consider you as a student. Similarly, so consider yourself as an object. Okay, so you are an object which is physically available. Okay, similarly in your Java programming language, objects are physically available. Physically available means they are available inside your memory. So how to create an object? Okay, so what I want to create an object of this student class. So right now no memory is allocated for this your student class. Okay, so we generally create an object in our heap memory. So we have already discussed about that there are two memory: stack memory and your heap memory. So in heap memory, we have nothing. Okay. Right now, we don't have nothing. Now what I want to create this object. So how objects are created, I am just telling you. I'm going to write new, what this new keyword will do. So this is a keyword. Okay. Using this keyword, what I am going to do, I am going to allocate some memory inside my heap memory. Okay. Now this is my heap memory. Now for this heap memory, what I want to allocate, I want to create an object of which class? Your student class. So what I will do, because I want to create an object of this class, so I'm just going to write a student over there. It means that now I have created an object obj. Let's assume obj inside my memory. And once I have created an object, so automatically I will get these values, ID and your name. Okay. And you already know that the default value of ID integer is what? 0. So it will assign default value of ID is what? 0. And it will assign default value of string as what? My name. So and the default value of string is what? Null. So this is how what I have created an object. So using this statement, if you are going to write, now I have created an object. Okay. Now if in future I want to print this value, and suppose this is having an address 1000. Okay. Now let's assume I want to print the value of this object. Can I print the value of this object? No, I cannot print the value of this object. Why I cannot print the value of this object? Because I don't know the address. Okay, I'm just telling you about this thing. But whenever you are writing your code, you don't know the address where you have allocated and where you have created this object inside my heap memory. So that is why what we generally do, we use a reference variable. So this S1 is known as your reference variable, and this reference variable we are creating it for which class? Your student class. So that is why whenever I'm going to write student S1 over there, it means this S1 is storing the address. So suppose the address is 1000, let's assume, okay? So now 1000 is the address. So now using S1, you can call it, I can go to that particular object, okay? So using, you can call this thing as your postman. Let's assume I have created this postman, and this postman is going to tell me and locate your location, where your location is. If I want to print your, if I want to ask your name or something, your ID, what I will do, I will go, I will send this postman, because this postman is having an idea about your address, what is your address is, okay? But if I haven't created this S1 as your as a S1 as your reference variable, then if I won't be able to find out what your ID and name is. Okay. So this is how what we generally do in Java. We generally create an object. Okay. So this is how we have created an object. And using these objects, what we generally do, we create we generally access all these, whatever the fields, whatever the methods we have. Like I can give you one example, because you already have an idea about scanner class. So what we generally do in scanner class, suppose you want to write some problem, class, suppose example, okay? So you are writing public static void main. So over there, whenever you are writing, see, what you are writing it, you are writing scanner SC, whatever the object name you want to write, you write new, and then you write scanner. Suppose we generally write system.in. So this is the map functionality of this thing. So I'm not going to discuss about what do you mean by system.in. See here what you are doing it. This is a class which is already available. Okay, scanner is a class which is already available. So inside my heap memory, I am creating an object of my scanner class. Okay, and that class I have created. So whatever the properties of this class, okay, my scanner class, now for those properties, I have created my object. Now, if I want to use those properties, like what I generally do, we generally use sc.nextInt. Okay. Now, what we are going to do using this reference variable. So this is a reference variable, okay? Because this reference variable know the address of this object. Let's assume 1000. Now, if I'm going to call sc.nextInt, so what it will do? It will directly go through and directly call the object. Inside that object, you will find the methods too, because this is just your object of your scanner class. So that is why we will be able to call those particular methods. Okay. So that is
So
why
here S is a variable now.
this SC is your reference variable. Okay. This is known as
And
your
here
reference.
the object is a virtual thing, right?
No, object is not a virtual thing. Why you are calling it as a virtual thing? See, this object is holding a memory. Okay. In reality, it is holding some memory. So suppose you are using, like in this case, you are using how many data type? Your data is of what? Your integer allocate 2 byte. Okay. And your string allocate how many byte? Sorry, your this allocate your, I think, 4 byte, and this also allocate 4 byte. So it will automatically allocate 8 byte of memory in your memory. So it is not virtually available. It is physically there in your memory. Okay. But if you will see about your class, so class is not storing all these data types. So class is not having these, it is not storing these things in your memory, inside your memory. Here, according to our class, we are just declaring it, okay, this is a integer data type, this is of your string data type, like that. Okay. Always remember, always keeps in this point in your mind. So this is not your virtual thing, okay? Because this thing is having an address. That is why we required this thing. Otherwise, if I want, suppose what if we haven't used this thing, okay? If we haven't used this thing, let's assume I have created an object, okay, of scanner class. Now I have created an object of this class. Now I want to access there is a method that is named as nextInt method. I want to call this method of this object. So how can I call that method? Can I call it? No, I cannot call it because I don't know the address where I have stored this object. Okay. So that is why where I have stored this object, for which what I will do, I just create a reference variable of that particular class. Okay, like scanner SC. Now this SC is having an address of this class, so that if I am going to write sc.nextInt, then only I will be able to use that particular method. Got the point? Even if someone is having any doubt related to that, you can directly ask me. Okay. So right now, because gradually you will understand. Even though right now, if you are having any doubt, I can understand that it's not quite simple. It is a complicated topic. Okay, right now. But the thing which you should remember and understand, because sometimes I have seen like a student understand this entire syntax in a wrong manner. New keyword we always used to allocate memory. Whenever we are going to write new student, then we are going to create an object of this particular class. And somebody, if someone is say that S1 is object, no, S1 is not an object. S1 is your what reference variable. Always remember this point. Okay, like this. So if I'm going to execute this code, so the output which I will get over there is 0 and null. Why I am getting the output 0 and null? Because s1.id, s1.name. So because we haven't assigned any value, okay, any value of to that particular object, so we will get that by default value. So what is the default value of integer? That is 0. What is the default value of string? That is null. Now the second question that comes into your mind is why we are creating an object. So why we are not working on this class thing? Okay, we can define it like this. So now you can create thousand lakhs of objects. Okay, you can create different and 1000 objects you can create for this particular student class, and all these objects are independent to each other. What does it mean? If I am going to write s1, so s1 is basically, if I have created s1 as an in id, s1.id, okay, in the id part of this particular student, what I want to enter one value. Okay, similarly, if I have created a student 2 over there, if I have created a student 2 s2 object or a reference variable, new object, if I have created, if I'm going to write s2.id2 like this, so these two values are independent to each other. They are not at all means related to each other. Like in your class, your name is not at all dependent on some other's student name. Okay, so that is why we always go for your objects, because objects are independent to your other. Okay, now we are going to discuss about the
Sure.
lives. Yes, yes.
So then what? Why are we using the scanner when now in our labs?
Okay. So why we are using this scanner in our labs? See, whenever you are taking runtime values, you already know that in runtime we are taking some values, huh? So because in CodeZinker you won't be able to see those things, but you can see that in test cases we are passing so some values over there. So all those values, whenever you want to you want to read some value during runtime, like 100 value I want to pass during runtime after compilation, after during execution. If I want to pass 100 value, so how can I read this value? So for in order to read this value, either you write your own code, or what you can do, you can use this class. So that is why we are using this class, because this class is having that code through which we can read this value. Okay, so basically we just are using one property of your Java programming language, that is your code reusability. Code reusability means the code is already written, you are just calling those methods every time. It's not like that you are again going to write a program how to read a value, because reading something during runtime is not easy in your Java programming language, again for which you have to write like 1000 lines of code. Okay, So that is why this class is already available in your Java programming language. So what I am going to do, I am basically creating an object of that particular class, and whatever the methods that are there, I am just calling those methods like next int, and using this method, what I am doing is I am reading the runtime values. Got the point?
Sir,
Yes, sir, got.
Okay.
sir, here scanner is a class now.
Yeah, scanner is a class.
Sir, can we make the like that when we start the program, we make a class like class main, class ABC. Can we make the class like class scanner? So
So
we
you are
have only one class.
so you are saying that if you can we create a class named as scanner? This is what you are saying?
Yes, sir. Because till now we are making two classes, class main, and here we make the class scanner. There are two classes in a single program.
So this is why, na, see why we are creating a class, because we want to reuse our code. Okay, so right now you are using only two class, but in future it might be possible you are going to use 10, 15, 20 class in a single program. Okay, so that is the
Okay.
functionality actually. Because see, right now you know why to create this scanner, why to write a code for this scanner class. Okay, if you have already write down, suppose you have write down one class which is basically taking some real time values, runtime values, why to again rewrite that particular program? It is of no use, na. So if it is already there, so again no need to write it down again. You can write it. I am not saying that you cannot create a program or create a class like that, but it is just a wastage of your time, because that is the functionality of Java. Otherwise, why we should use Java programming language if that particular programming language is very complex? Okay, so that these are the advantages of Java programming language, that you can use other classes in some other classes too. Like we are using this class in your EX class. So basically we are using it. So we can use the functionalities of other class in that particular same class too. Okay, like that. We are going to discuss about, yes, any other question?
So when we are creating a class, student S1 equal to new student. So what was
Yes.
the when we are creating the object? So what was the name of that object?
Okay, so there will be no name of that particular copy. In reality, if I'm going to tell you about, there will be no name. Actually, see how this is my heap memory. Always remember, objects are created in your heap memory. And later on, I will tell you about why we store all these objects in your heap memory. Okay. Right now, just understand this topic. Otherwise, you will get a lot of complex question that comes into your mind. So first of all, whenever I am going to create this new student, na, so what will happen? Basically, using this object, what we are doing it, we are creating one memory space. This space I have created, okay, and this space I have created. I am just telling you that this is an object, but in reality, there is no name of this object. How can I find out this object? But this object is having some address. Got it? So that is why I said that we have to assign this address into some variable. Otherwise, we will lost this object, because the question which you have asked is that what is the name of that object, and we don't know anything about this object. Got the point? So that is why we always use this your reference variable, so that in future we can retrack or track this object. Otherwise, we won't able to access this object. Similarly, if I'm going to create one more object, student s2 is equals to new student. Okay, like this. If I'm again going to create one more object, okay, object, how from the RHS side we are creating an object. Always remember, okay. Now what will happen? Again in the heap memory, like somewhere, like here, uh, it depends upon our JVM, okay, where these where it is allocating that particular memory, but it will allocate somewhere like that. So suppose the address is, for example, 1236. This is the address of this memory. Okay. So now I am having two objects, and these two objects are having what? ID and name, ID and a name, like this. Now I want to read the value of this object. So that is why using this S2, in S2 I am having an address that is 1236. In S1 I am having an address 1000 over there. So these two are having what? These two are reference variable are having some addresses. Okay, and based on these addresses, we will be able to access these objects, because objects are having no name. But why we are calling it as an object? Because these objects are physically available, and these objects are having all the features, okay, all the features that are available inside my this class. So if I'm having one more variable, one more methods, all these things will be there inside my this objects, whatever the object I have created. Got the point? Or still any doubt? So if you are having any doubt, you can directly ask me. Okay, please don't hesitate, because this concept is very important, and I can understand that some of you are having a lot of doubts related to this concept. So that is why I'm taking a lot of time in order to explain this topic. Okay, but later on, I am 100% sure that gradually, you will understand this concept. But the concept right now, which you should know about this thing, is that whenever we are creating an object, how we are creating an object using this new student, okay, through which I am going to create an object over here inside my heap memory. And the address of this object I am going to assign in the this reference variable like S1, S2, S3, whatever the variable name you are going to use of that particular data type. Okay, like this. Now the life cycle of an object. So object is having 4 steps. Okay, first one is object creation, second one is object accessing, third one is object not accessing, and fourth one is your garbage collection. So garbage collection is again one of the main important property of your Java programming language. So we are going to discuss about it. So first step is your object creation. So how to create an object? So we create an object by using new keyword. Okay, like I have mentioned here. So we create an object by using new keyword. We can initialize reference variable within the object. Okay, this. So here what I have done, I have created a class name as creation. And as you can see over there, here it is not required, but I just want to show you as an example. What I have done, I have created an object. So how can I create an object? I'm going to write new creation. So through RHS, I am going to create an object, and the address of this object I'm going to assign it in the data type of my this ABC variable, okay, of creation data type. So this is how we can create an object in your Java programming language. Okay, always remember this thing. So till now, is there anyone who is having any doubt?
Sir,
Yes.
I'm
sir,
having a doubt.
what is the significance of the data type creation or the data type student? Like we have data
Okay,
type
okay.
like integer.
So actually, yeah, the question is very valid. Okay. So right now, I don't want to explain you this thing. Okay. Why I am not explaining you this thing? Because otherwise, some of the student again get confused. Okay. But I will tell you about the scenarios. I will explain you why this thing is required. But till now, what you understand is that whenever we are creating any class, okay, whenever we are creating an object of any class, that particular reference variable should be of that particular class name. Okay, otherwise, in some of the scenarios, you will get an error. So that thing I'm going to explain you surely, but in the upcoming lecture, but not now, because this is just a beginning. Otherwise, some of the students get confused when we can write other class name or not like that. Okay, so I don't want to create that much confusion, because even though this topic is again that much complex, not that much simple. Okay, but what we have learned in our today's lecture, and then I'm going to end this our today's lecture, is that how to create an object. First of all, what is an object we have gone through, then what is a class, okay, then how to create a class and how to create an object. So these are the things which we have covered in our today's lecture. Then in the next lecture, we are going to discuss about the life cycle of an object. Okay, like in our tomorrow's lecture, we are going to discuss about it. In between, after this lecture or in the evening, all of you should go through and just try to see what is an object, so that you will understand, you will have a better understanding what is a class. And whatever the doubt you are having even after this lecture, so in tomorrow's lecture I'm going to explain those doubts, whatever the doubt you are having. So till now, yes.
Sir, until now we were creating class main and writing the whole code in a body, right?
Yes.
Sir, but we can create as much class as we want, like 10, 15, right?
Yes.
So, sir, then why we are using that class main above and writing the whole part in that?
Sorry, I don't get your question. What you said, so suppose I have created a class creation. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
We have created the main class creation here, and we
Okay.
can create more classes further down, right?
Okay, so you are saying that create more class like public class creation 1, creation 2, like that. This is what you're saying?
So, yes, sir. Why we are creating that main class above and writing the whole code inside that?
Okay, so you are saying that why we are using this public static void main? This is your question.
No, sir. No. You don't get me, sir. So I'm saying that we are creating a main class, right? And writing the whole body part, right?
Okay.
But we can create as much class as we want.
Okay.
So then why we are creating that main class? We can create that down now.
Why we are, sorry, I don't get your question. Can you please explain using this example so that I will understand what you are saying? What you are asking is that here in this example.
Sir, I will ask you tomorrow.
No, you can ask me right now. No issue at all. Okay, suppose I have created a class student, and what you are asking me?
Sir, we have created a class student, right? And
Okay.
now we are going to write anything in the body, right?
Okay, yeah. This is the body of
We
a class. Yeah.
we can create as much class as we want here, right?
Okay, after this, I can also create one more class that is named as your class student 1. Yeah.
Anything, sir, anything.
Yeah, any other class. Okay, I can create a class
Then,
bird, for example.
sir, then what's the motive behind writing that main class above? We can write that down and create many further classes there.
Okay. See, the main funda which you should know about why we are creating a class is that, because as I told you that in reality we are dealing with objects. Okay, so whenever we are creating a class, okay, so the reason why we are creating a class is that because we just want to show you that, okay, this will be the template, this is how we are going to classify all objects. So all those objects which we are satisfying the constraint of this class, we call those objects as a student object. Got it? Like this. So let's assume if we are creating several other classes too, like in the case of your scale. So in this class, we can also create an object of other class too. That class is a public class. So the question I think which you asked me, even though I haven't got the question, what you have asked, but according to your question, you asked me like why we are writing all these codes inside this class statement. This is what you are asking, na?
Yes, sir, and we are separately writing that class above again and all that.
Okay, so why we are writing this statement? This is your question.
Sir, basically,
Yeah, you can speak in Hindi, no issue at all. Okay.
so I'm just saying
Sir,
that.
can we leave?
Yeah, others can leave too. So those who are having any doubt, they can still remain in this class. Others can leave.
Sir, I'm
Sir,
just
is the
saying that
attendance
we are
done?
creating it.
Yeah, I will take the attendance, no issue. Yeah.
Sir, we are creating a main class above and creating more classes down there. Does those two classes hold same standard?
No issue at all. At that time, classes are independent to each other. Okay. Suppose I have created a class in a single program. If I'm going to create a class student, okay, and if I'm going to create a class bird, for example, okay.
तो सर वो स्टूडेंट और बर्ड सेम स्टैंडर्ड पे हैं फिर
नहीं
अलग
नहीं
अलग है वो
दोनों
स्टूडेंट
डिफरेंट है,
ज्यादा
both are different, they are not at all similar to each other, because this student class, देखो जो भी ऑब्जेक्ट हम इस स्टूडेंट का बनाएंगे वो स्टूडेंट को ही बिलोंग करेगा, जो हम क्लास का बनाएंगे, जो बर्ड क्लास का बनाएंगे वो बर्ड को ही बिलोंग करेगा. गॉट इट? सो वो एक दूसरे से रिलेटेड नहीं होंगे, वो दोनों के दोनों इंडिपेंडेंट होंगे क्लासेस. Even though if you are going to write, this is your question, now I got your question. Suppose I have created a class student over there, okay,
Yes, sir.
and then I have created in a single program class bird.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, now you are saying that whether these two are dependent. No, these two are independent to each other. Okay, ये दोनों independent है, they are not dependent to each other. So if I am going to create an object of this class, okay, this class student class का अगर object बनाऊंगा तो जो feature student के होंगे वही उस object में आएंगे, ना कि bird के आएंगे. तो अगर जब मैं bird का object बनाऊंगा तो bird के ही object के जो आएंगे वो. Got it?
तो वही मैं बोल रहा था, ये बर्ड जो क्लास है ये फिर हम स्टूडेंट वाली बॉडी में क्यों लिख रहे हैं?
See, why we are writing those things, because sometimes what happen, like in the case of your scanner, okay, जैसे अभी मैं तुम्हें बता रहा हूँ स्कैनर क्लास. अब तुमने क्या कर रखा है, तुम there sometimes we have some classes those who have some functionalities, okay, जिसके अंदर कुछ methods होती हैं already. Suppose तुमने एक क्लास ऑलरेडी क्रिएट कर रखी है, लाइक अगर तुम लोगों की अभी फर्स्ट लैब होगी तो सपोज तुमने वहां पर एक मेथड सपोज लिख रखी है जो फॉर एग्जांपल प्राइम नंबर फाइंड आउट करती है. व्हाट इट, प्राइम नंबर की तुमने एक ऑलरेडी मेथड लिख रखी है. सपोज कोई एग्जांपल ex1 करके क्लास है. ओके, नाउ मुझे क्या करना है, जब मैं एक स्टूडेंट क्लास, आई एम क्रिएटिंग दिस स्टूडेंट क्लास, मुझे इस मेथड की यूटिलिटी है, आई वांट दिस मेथड. ओके, सो मेरे पास एक ऑप्शन है, या तो ईदर आई विल राइट दिस एंटायर मेथड अगेन. ओके, मैं फिर से प्राइम नंबर का पूरा प्रोग्राम यहाँ पर लिखूंगा, मेथड करूंगा. बट इफ आई एम हैविंग एन आइडिया कि भाई ये मेथड तो ऑलरेडी यहाँ पर अवेलेबल है, सो व्हाट आई विल डू,
Okay, now I got it, sir. Now I got it.
I will directly create an object of this class, okay, and I will directly call this method, yeah, variables, whatever the method functionality there.
Now I got it, sir.
या तो बेसिकली हम इसमें क्या कर रहे हैं, कोड रीयूजेबिलिटी कर रहे हैं. सो कोड जो ऑलरेडी यहाँ पर लिखा है, तो सिमिलरली जैसे स्कैनर का मैंने तुम्हें बताया था, तो स्कैनर का ऑलरेडी वहां पर कोड लिखा हुआ है जो रियल टाइम वैल्यूज तुम्हारी रीड कर रहा है. गॉट इट? सो अब हम वो मेथड्स को डायरेक्टली कॉल कर रहे हैं, वी डोंट वांट टू राइट अगेन. तो विद इन अ क्लास आल्सो वी कैन डायरेक्टली कॉल दोस मेथड्स, नो इशू एट ऑल. बट आई विल टेल यू दोस मेथड्स शुड बी पब्लिक. ओके, वो पब्लिक होनी चाहिए, मींस पब्लिकली वो अवेलेबल होनी चाहिए. ऐसा नहीं कि कोई हम प्राइवेट प्रॉपर्टी को एक्सेस कर सकते हैं, हम सिर्फ पब्लिक प्रॉपर्टी को ही एक्सेस कर सकते हैं. अगर वो क्लासेस पब्लिक हैं, then we can access their method, no issue. Okay.
So you mean all the classes are independent of each other, right?
Yeah, all the classes are independent to each other. They are not at all
Okay,
related.
now I got it.
But with
Now I got
that is why that is why we use objects, so that we can basically use their functionalities, like their methods and whatever the things we have. Okay.
Okay, sir. Now got it. Thank you, sir.
Just